One of the big advances in our understanding around suicide in the last 10 years is this idea that the factors that lead you to become suicidal are different from the factors that lead you to attempt suicide. So we often talk about this phased transition, or going from what is it that happens, somebody who has thoughts of suicide and doesn't go any further, doesn't attempt suicide. How are they similar or different from somebody who crosses the precipice to attempt suicide? And the work that we do in terms of the psychological model that I've developed is try to understand that transition, that movement from thinking to acting, thinking to attempting suicide, or sadly dying by suicide. So when I think about what leads someone to suicide, I try and think of the complexity, and we all recognize the complexity of suicide. And I suppose one of the messages that I learned very early on was that there's never one single risk factor. And the work that we've done looking at this pathway, this transition from thinking to acting, suggests that a group of factors that I call volitional moderators, which is a technical term, but what it really means is volitional factors are things like impulsivity. So the more impulsive you are, the more likely you are to make that transition from thinking to attempting suicide. The greater exposure to suicide that you have. So knowing people close to you, family and close friends who've taken their own life, makes it more likely that you will attempt suicide. That's another volitional phase factor. We know that physical pain sensitivity, or the notion of capacity or capability for suicide, makes it more likely that you'll attempt suicide. So if you have a high physical pain tolerance, if you are fearless about dying, these are two factors which are key to the transition from thinking about suicide to attempting suicide. And we also know the extent to which you've planned or imagined suicide, we think. Also, imagining yourself dead is a contributory factor to this transition from thinking to acting. In my sort of thinking, I've developed this model of suicide, which really looks at entrapment as being sort of part of this key final pathway to suicide. And entrapment is this sense of which I can't escape, and that suicide to the mind of the individual is often not about wanting to die, but it's about wanting the pain of entrapment to end.